Welcome everybody to our live stream today. So this is our Chocolatey Coffee Break live stream for February. I was looking at the calendar there. It is actually February. We're on 2 live streams every month on the first and Thursday. And this community coffee break live stream is on the 3rd Thursday of each month, where we talk about chocolate community, what's happening, how you can get involved and talk to key members of the chocolatey community. So our live stream on the first Thursday of each month, the other live stream that we do, that's the Chocolatey Product Spotlight, where we spotlight chocolatey products, recent releases and important features that are coming up. In a previous live stream, I interviewed Gary. So it's actually my turn today. So I'm in the hot seat. Gary's actually going to interview me. Now, usually at this stage, the first thing I would do is introduce myself to let you know who I am. But if I do that, then you're not going to know about what happens later on. So that's part of one of the questions, obviously. So I'm not going to do that. But let me introduce my co-host. I'm Gary Ewan Park, who will be putting me through the ringer today with all these awesome questions that Gary has come up with. Gary, do you want to introduce yourself and your methods of interrogation for today?
I can certainly try and do that, yes. So my name is Gary Ewan Park. I am a senior software engineer here at Chocolatey Software. I live in Scotland, similar to Paul, but I guess we'll come on to that a little bit. My method of interrogation, it's going to be very similar we've kind of got a structured set of questions that we put to everyone that we can bring on the chat with us here. So I'll be putting those questions to Paul in a reasonably relaxed format. If I think of anything that I think I can interrogate him with further, then I will. But yeah, it's going to be a laid-back chat just to find out who Paul is, what he does, and we can go from there.
Awesome. And apologies for coughing there. I did try and mute it, then realised I coughed and hadn't muted it. So not very professional. But before we kind of get to all the questions, I was excited about it until I got onto the stream. Now I'm kind of dreading it a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. Before we start, we're building our community here on YouTube and on Twitch. So please follow us on Twitch and subscribe with the bell on YouTube, and you'll get notifications when we next stream. And make sure you like or dislike any video on YouTube that we have so that we know what kind of content that you all want to see as well. So yeah, let's jump straight into the questions.
So the first question then, Paul. So the first question would be, well, it's okay. So who are you? What do you do? And where do you come from?
Who am I? So my name is Paul Broadwith. I'm the technical engineer and manager at Chocolatey Software. I do many different things here at Chocolatey Software. I look after there's a team of people. It's obviously not just me, but I kind of look after a lot of parts of the community, and I help manage the team that do that. I manage the operations and the development teams at Chocolatey Software. So all the products that go out and all the products that you use, it's my team that produce those products or develop those products. We also have a team who support those products as well. So Chocolatey, is a large team of, there's a team of people behind all of the products. It's not just the development. I have to say that, but I'm managing the team that's developing those products. And as I said, the operations team as well, that look after things like the Chocolate website and all the infrastructure that we have as well. And as you mentioned, Gary, earlier on, I am from Scotland, just outside Glasgow in Scotland, but I've lived in many different places in Scotland, including the very North Highlands of Scotland. Not anywhere south, actually, of Glasgow, so that's probably just Glasgow North, not down to the borders. So yeah, that's who I am and where I'm from.
Here we go. Thank you for that. So you've been in this IT role or IT jobs for a while. When did you get started and how did you get into IT?
I've actually been working in IT for 32 years in total. And there was a small period. I actually worked as a pensions clerk at an insurance company that's no longer around anymore. It's called Commercial Union. I think another company took them over. But I was a pensions clerk for a little bit of time there. And then I went back into IT again. So probably out of the 32 years, 30 of those would have been in IT, if you like. How did I get involved in it? I just always was involved with computers. At some point, got my first computer when I was 11. That was a ZX81, 1K of RAM.
Okay.
Had I think it was a 16K RAM expansion pack, maybe an 8K. Anyway, it was not a lot, RAM expansion pack from there, and moved on to various other computers, Commodore 16, 64, Atari ST. So I've always been involved with computers at some stage, whether it's and later on in the, when I got involved in PCs and building them as well, and getting involved in coding and things like that. So yeah, I've always really been involved in IT in some shape or form. What was the other part of the question? I've totally forgotten.
No, that was it. So but how did you get into IT, and kind of where did you start? What was your first job in IT?
I think my first job when I was 18 was actually in sales. So it was for a very, very, very small company. Again, just outside Glasgow. And they sold custom build computers. I would build them, and then we would sell them to home users and small businesses. That was way back in the dim and distant days when there was no. I was going to say Windows XP hadn't been released. Was it Windows 3.1? Were we a bit further on than that? It was round about that time anyway. I remember playing around with Windows 3.1. I still have OS2 Warp. I don't know if anybody is used or is aware of that. That was an awesome operating system, but is no longer with us. So yeah, I should have lots and lots of bits and pieces with old operating systems. Gem as well wasn't an operating system, but it was a GUI that sat on top of, was it DOS? I think it was. All these things that most people will never have heard of, but I actually used it.
There you go.
So yeah, 5.25-inch floppy disks for the win.
So I remember those. Yeah, I had some of those. Only briefly though. That those predated me a little bit.
Really?
Well, it wasn't until some of the jobs that I've had when you go into certain places and they would still run much older systems, and there would still be even more older than 5.25-inch, but the bigger cassette discs that you used to get. They still had machines that would use those. But no, so my first computer was a Commodore 64. But I didn't use it as a computer. I only used it as a gaming machine where I would play silly little games on it. I wouldn't use it for coding or doing anything like that on it. So I didn't really get my first computer until I went to university. Is when I started getting into computers. I missed a lot and kind of played catch up after that. But anyway, that's not about me here.
No, it's not.
So following on from that, so
weeks ago.
You've had this long sordid history on IT, and then you obviously stumbled onto Chocolatey. So when did that happen? When did you first find Chocolatey, and what were you using it for?
When we were looking at the questions earlier on, as Gary said, it's a preset list of questions that we tend to ask everybody, so we get the same sort of conversations. I was trying to think, when did I come across Chocolatey and how? I genuinely don't remember how I came across Chocolatey, but what I do remember is the reason I was looking for something like Chocolatey. So I can only put two and two together, and this is where it came, because what I was trying to do at the time was make machines fairly consistent, because there was one back then when I discovered it. I'd looked back. My first pull request to Chocolatey was 2015. We'll probably talk about that in a minute, but it would have been probably round about that time, maybe a little bit before, where you were recommended to reinstall Windows every so often. So Windows get itself into a bit of a mess. Recommendations, hey, reinstall it. And somebody like me and, in IT, you're always installing stuff and uninstalling it. Windows gets in a bit of a mess. And it's a pain to do all of that. But not only a pain, you've got to install all the software. You've got to download all the installers. You've got to know where they are. And back then as well, internet wasn't as fast as it is now. So you to install it, and then you to go and update all this software manually, and it was just a pain. And back then as well, you get a lot of software now that you go into like help and update software. That wasn't a thing back then either. You did have some software that did that, but it really wasn't a thing that was wide. You would get some software, but the vast majority you'd still have to go and download that installer again, and install the software manually to do that update. So I can only imagine that I was looking about for a solution for that and found Chocolatey, because that is it's the perfect solution to that. And yes, started using that to make sure the machines that you refresh were back to the state it was before you install Windows.
Good. As similar to my kind of foray into it as well. I was creating what we were referring to as golden images. So we would build them up into a known state and using Chocolatey to make that happen. So yeah, it's a similar similar sort of story to how I got into it. So yeah, you mentioned that your first contribution was back in 2015. So what was that? Was that a pull request into the PowerShell version of Chocolatey, or was that the C# version of Chocolatey, or what was that? I know your history is PowerShell based for contribution. So what was that contribution in Chocolatey?
Looking back on it earlier on, it was amending a template. And there was one slightly after that. There was two in 2015, late 2015, I think it was October. One was changed. There was, I remember it distinctly. There was something that didn't work in one of the helpers, and it was to do with an array. And I can't remember what it was, but I submitted a PR to fix that. So that was one of them, and the other one was amending the template. So I was actually very surprised when I looked at it earlier on, and it was 2015, because I thought I always had it in my head it was late 2016.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been using Chocolatey now for, my maths are bad, 7.5 years. You know, it's thereabouts. That's a lot longer than I thought. Yeah, to be fair.
So did that PR get accepted, or how?
The template one didn't. It wasn't it didn't get accepted at the time. You were on one of the comments and one of the PRs. Now, but you just bear in mind that I hadn't used Git at that point at all. So the first time we used Git was to submit that PR. I actually think the PR I submitted to Chocolatey was probably the first PR I ever done. If it wasn't the first, it would have been one of a handful of the first. So Git was very unfamiliar to me, and there was a back and forward on the PR to get me to do this or that, to get it to work, create a branch, all this stuff. And I eventually gave up with one of them. And either it was pulled in. I think Rob said he was going to do the work needed and pulled it in separately. And on the second one, I think somebody fixed it up and just did it and pulled it in. But I was at a loss. I think my comment was, I'm at a loss here. What to do. So I couldn't go any further because I just didn't know what to do, even with the instructions. So, but I've come a long way since then. I'm not a Git guru by any means, but I can do a lot more than I could back then. I could have, if they submitted this PR today, I would have been able to do the work that was required. But back then,
that's a very similar story to my first PR, because it was in that my first PR in Chocolatey was when I learned how to do an interactive rebase, and I think that kind of what was being hinted at in your PRs. It was. And the Rismone at the time helped walk me through to do that. I'd never done that before. It was magic as far as I was concerned.
They're still magic today.
They are. I mean, I think it's become much more known about now. I think doing an interactive rebase and changing commits and all that sort of stuff. But it can be very daunting for when it's your first one. Absolutely. Okay, so that was your first contribution to the Chocolatey product, let's say. So what about the Chocolatey community? Because yes, you were using Chocolatey in 2015, but when did you start getting into the community side of things and chatting to people and other things in the community? When did that happen, and how did that come about?
Again, I'm doing it from memory, and being old now, my memory's not what it used to be. It would have been a couple of years later. I remember being involved in moderation very early on, and we used Gitter back then. And I remember some of the old names older moderators. What I meant is people that had been around a lot longer than I had. And they're no longer around in the community. People move on, and that's absolutely fine. So yeah, it would have been a couple of years later, but I got kind of hooked a little bit on trying to make sure packages have a certain standard, and I still try and do that now. So it's kind of my goals for the community haven't really changed from what they were back then. But yeah, it was basically moderation. I was writing my own packages. It started making sense that I was maintaining my own packages before the software that I wanted to install, and then it was just a natural progression there. How do I help other people? How do I get involved, and how do I increase the quality of the packages that are available? So yeah.
Yeah, so you touched on that. So just for folks that don't know, so package moderation is, I refer to it as the one of the best things about Chocolatey and one of the worst things about Chocolatey. So package moderation is the process of someone in the community submitting a package to Chocolatey Community Repository. It then gets automatically moderated by the automation services that we have, checking for some elements of code quality, making sure it installs, etc. Make sure there's what viruses are associated with it. And then the latter part of that is a human moderator coming along and checking the package to make sure that it meets that kind of high threshold that you hinted at there. So it's a process that we go through, and you've been part of that for a while now, both in terms of maintaining your own packages, which also go through that moderation process, but also moderating packages from other folks that are coming through the system as well. So it's it's one of the things that I really like about Chocolatey, but it's also, as I say, the queue gets backed up, people get annoyed. It's the kind of never-ending battle of shoveling snow sort of thing. When it's been snowing and you're clearing your driveway, you get a little bit done and then the snow comes along again. So it's one of those things that I know that you're involved in. So it's thank you for that. So thinking about Chocolatey specifically, what is the one kind of killer feature that you think Chocolatey is maybe missing, and what would you like to see, or getting that implemented, what would you like to see happen in Chocolatey?
I thought about this as well. I don't think there's there's nothing that jumps out at me from my use of it, because I run a Windows machine. I run a Windows machine at work. So I keep my, the work machine up to date with Chocolatey. So I'm using Chocolatey all the time. There's no killer feature for me that Chocolatey doesn't already do. So that's not saying it's perfect. I want everybody aware that I'm not saying Chocolatey's perfect and it's feature complete. I'm saying for me, there's nothing really that I feel that it's missing. From if I put my technical engineering manager hat on, the one thing I think that is missing for me is really our Intune integration. Is great, but I think we just need to make it a bit better than it is. And that's the one thing for me that I keep coming back to, and that is something we are going to do. We are going to make it better. But it works. It's great. People are using it. I want to make it better than it is. And that's really the one big thing for me that's sort of lacking rather than missing.
I mean, we can't speak of. There are certainly plans in the roadmap that we've spoken about how we can make it easier to provide that sort of functionality, but doing it in a way where we don't make it harder to keep it up to date, because that's one of the things that we do kind of struggle with a little bit in the product is we want to do something, we have to do all these other updates first in order to make it happen. So that's one of the kind of architecture changes that we've spoken about going into some of the later releases coming out, that will make it easier to iterate on things like an Intune integration with Chocolatey. So there's definitely some exciting stuff in and around that area that I think will, I'm hoping folks will enjoy when we get into land, etc. So
there's a period at the moment where we're really looking, I think, at consolidating where we are with the Chocolatey products. And I think, as you said, so there's lots of little things that we've kind of lined up, and the Intune part and other things will come off the back of those. So it's I think the work we're doing just now as well is that a lot of people might not see what's being done, because there's no, at the moment, we're not working on a huge number of killer features. We're working on trying to build that groundwork for going forward. And I think once we have that, we've kind of talked about this, once we have that, then things will start to naturally roll out of that. And I'm quite excited for where that's going to go. I don't want to say too much more about that because we might have questions about it later as well.
I mean, just the final point on that from my point of view is that one of the things that I'm looking for this next big release that we're doing, that we've kind of hinted at and spoken about coming out, and there's already an alpha for it. One of the things that I'm hoping to achieve is kind of more consistent API, quote unquote API usage of Chocolatey. So how you run commands at the command line, what the output is, how you expect it to work. We're getting better at doing that and being consistent. But one of the things that comes with that is because Chocolatey is such a widely used product and has been around for so long, people get used to those inconsistencies. So we have to do it in a way that we're deprecating things correctly so that people know about it, to then being able to remove them or correct them in the upcoming version. So people don't see that side of things either. It's like we can't just break people because then people will be annoyed. So we need to do it in a way that we are deprecating, making people aware of it, and then removing those features when we can. and it's something we've always strived to do, that to have that continuity of usage of Chocolatey. But anyway, moving back onto the questions about you. So we've talked about community moderation and how you are a community moderator. So you mentioned that your first contribution in Chocolatey was around 2015, and you think around 2 years later you were becoming a community moderator as well. Is that round about the sort of time frame that? So I'm assuming at some point, I don't remember. I don't think it was me. Someone would have reached out to say, "Hey, Paul, would you want to become a community moderator?" So do you know how that came about? Who you spoke to? How did that part happen?
It was. I'm fairly certain it was Rob who reached out to me. I might be wrong. Again, we're going back, and I'm old, but I'm fairly certain it was Rob, because the main person I had communication with at Chocolatey was Rob at that point. Other people through the Moderators Get a channel, but that was mainly about moderation, so I didn't really speak to anybody from Chocolatey themselves at that point. So it would have been Rob, by and large, that would have reached out to me to ask me to do that. But it would probably have been, again, because of I was answering questions in Getter. It's one of those things. It's what we do now. We see people who are, active in the community answering questions, and you can see by people who are answering questions that they know what they're talking about. They have an idea of what a moderator is, or what a quality package is, or that kind of thing. And then by extension, you can say to them, well, you already have this knowledge and experience. Do you want to use it for the wider community? So yeah, that's where it would have been. From there.
So again, I don't remember when I first started, because obviously I've been around longer than you. My first contribution was a couple of years before you, but I don't remember when I first saw your hobby handle. I don't remember our first interaction, for example. I don't have a distinct memory of.
Maybe it was so bad that we were both blocked out.
Maybe that's what it was. Who is this person, and why is he telling me what to do? No, I don't recall how we got introduced. I obviously know you now as a colleague, and I think the first time I met you in person was when we went to a conference in the States, right?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up at the end.
Oh, you was? Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll hold on to that one then. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I've got distractions in the room with me, but it's went away again, so it's all good. And by it, I mean a little person.
Children. Yes,
it'll be a little person. Yes. So yeah, community moderator from around 2017. So what is it about community moderation that you think is so important? What's the most important role of a community moderator? What do you see as the main thing that you try to achieve?
Package quality, I think, is the most important thing for me. And by that, I mean the experience of the end user. Doing things in a standard way that allows the moderators to be able to review a package. So, everybody codes differently. But if we can have a somewhat standardized package or package code, in a certain kind of format, we talk about splatting, for example. We talk, we ask community maintainers to do that. That's really important, because that allows the moderator's job to be easier. And if the moderator's job is easier, then they can moderate more packages. And as you said, then less people are going to be annoyed when the queue backs up, because it's not going to back up as often, because people can get through things quicker. And then you've got the end user's experience. Little things like spelling mistakes. I wouldn't stop a package from going through for that, but I would suggest that they fix that for the next version. And you think, well, it's only a spell mistake, but yeah, if you're reading something that's got a spell mistake in it, your interpretation of the quality of that thing is less than it would otherwise have been. We're all humans. That's what we do. We can argue about it, but that's pretty much what we all do. And also, as I said, the standard of that code that's going in there as well. It's just really important to me that we have a repository full of good quality packages that meet a certain standard. And when people are installing them, upgrading, uninstalling them, they have a good experience of being able to do that.
Agreed. So what are your thoughts on the reasonably new service that we've used from a moderator standpoint, and the package differ that we have? What have been your thoughts in and around the usage of that?
Well, it was actually, I think it was Josh I was talking to. Oh, by the way, hi, Josh. I was supposed to say hi to Josh because he was definitely going to be on here today. Sorry, on the chat today. I was speaking to Josh early, I think it was during the week, and I was kind of complaining a little bit that every time I go into the moderation queue, I always end up with the new packages. I seem to be a magnet for them. And new packages, for anybody who's not a moderator, are actually much more difficult, or not much more difficult, take much more time to moderate than an existing package because of the package differ service we have now. So a new package has no diffs because there is no previous version. So you have to start from scratch. And it tends to be as well that new packages come from new maintainers. So they are not some people are not quite as up to speed with the kind of package quality that they have, and people go through a learning process and it's experience, so it's not a bad thing. It's always good when new people join the community. But so comparing both of those, if you've got a package with a diff in there, it can literally take you 10 seconds to moderate that package, because if for people who don't know, do we show the diffs to? No, I can't even remember if it's just moderators that see them at the moment. I think the plan was to show them to everybody. But if you don't know what the diff is, what happens is that you take the previous version of a package and the new one that's been submitted, and we create a diff file just to show what's changed. So if you go into that and you can see that what's actually changed is the version number and the checksum, and possibly the URL, because maybe it's got a version number in there or something, then you can go, okay, that's good. As long as it passes all the validation, verification, and the virus scanner tests, that's good to go. You can just approve that package and move on to the next one. So that saves a huge amount of time. But to give kudos to a couple of community members, it was Maurice and I think Manfred would produce the package differ module.
Yes,
that we didn't.
It was Maurice was the driving force behind that.
Yes. Yeah. I think Manfred's involved. There was James might have been involved as well. I can't remember. There was a few people involved, but I know Maurice kind of drove it to begin with. So while we took the inspiration from that, I don't think we used any of the code or anything like that. In fact, I know we didn't. We wrote it from scratch, but we took that inspiration from there. So they come up with the idea of that module to do it, that moderators could use to diff those packages in your console, and then we kind of took that and made it a service. Or the idea and made it a service. So, so the kudos for the idea, it certainly goes to them.
I've actually just checked in a incognito mode on CCR, and the diffs are not shown if you are not logged in anyway. Okay. So I know that. What I don't know is whether if you are signed in, regardless of your user rights, whether you see the diffs.
I know we were going to want to, because it's in early days at the moment. It's not long.
It's still kind of it's past the prototype stage now because it is active in production. But it's
maybe a kind of a 0.1 release, maybe. We want to kind of look like that. It's not quite a 1, but so the ultimate goal is to make sure everybody can see it. Corey's just said in the chat there he signed in as his user and he can see the diff on Chocolatey, and he's not a maintainer of it, nor is he a moderator, so you can see it if you're signed in. I think that the goal was to let everybody see it.
I mean, the initial kind of was it was kind of a new infrastructure for us. We didn't know how much it was going to add on to the weight of the page and all that sort of stuff, so we did keep it behind just for maintainers and moderators initially, I think, but then after that we opened it up once we knew it was going to work the way we wanted it to. So, no, it's for me when I'm going through the moderation queue, it's if you hit those ones, you kind of get into a stride of, oh, this is maybe the second or third or fourth version of a package, and the first one got approved, going through all the kind of checks, and then literally all that's happened is a new URL and a new checksum. It's like, well, just approve it. It's nice and simple. So it definitely helps from that point of view. Yeah,
it makes things so much quicker when you don't get new packages. So I never see it because that's all I seem to
get. So the obvious question that comes out of this is, I've kind of hinted at it already, but the moderation queue is the best thing and the worst thing about Chocolatey. It can be a time suck. It takes lots of energy to go through them. As you said, if it's a new package, there's additional things that you want to do to make sure that the quality gates are met, etc., etc. So what keeps you coming back to the moderation queue and being involved in the community moderation side of things? Because it is a bit of a thankless task, and it can be people get angry. People get upset sometimes. It's not a nice job. It's like being a traffic warden. Sometimes you have to give someone a ticket because they've parked illegally, but it's still your job. So what keeps you coming back to getting involved and helping out with those things?
Well, before I say that, just to touch on a point, people won't know this if they're not a moderator or they have not been around the community very much. We have had lots of we have had abuse. Myself and Gary particularly have had abuse when moderating packages. So it's not something that's pleasant sometimes. Now that abuse, like, you know, in the grand scale of things, is 1%, maybe even probably less than that. That, you know, the other 99 is fine. But it has happened, and it causes us some problems. You don't want it. This is your job. So, you know, to put that into context for people, I think it's important to say that. But what keeps me coming back to it, as you said, it is a thankless task, but it's just a task that needs done. It's a task that I do enjoy doing when I get time. That's the other thing now, because I'm in a different role now. You know, I'm really busy all the time at work. I don't tend to get much time to do moderation, but I have been trying to force myself to do some recently. Since December, actually, I've been trying to do that, because we do have, for people who are not moderators, we do have a monthly stats chart, for want of a better description, which we're not competitive. There's no kind of prize at the end of it, but we do rank, you know, who's moderated packages that particular month. And for the end of last year, we actually ranked who was done the most number of packages for the whole year. And I think there was something like 5,000 packages were moderated over the year by the moderators of the community. So that's the huge number of packages. But yeah, sorry, I'm off in another tangent. I think again, it just comes back to I like people I like to teach people. I like, you know, people are coming in, and I kind of complained about it a little bit, but it was a little bit in jest. People come in, there's new moderators, new maintainers. They don't know really a lot about package maintenance. We do have a lot of documentation, but you know, sometimes people don't read that or whatever. Maybe it's not clear to them. But I like to take that package that's got issues, and I like to see them come back with a package that works. And then as you do more moderation, you actually get to know maintainers. You know, you might not know them personally, but you'll see their name. You'll go, okay, they're a consistent maintainer of a package. And again, you can look at that package and know that it's going to be a good quality package based on the fact that they're a good quality maintainer. But it's also good to see those people that you remember back to the beginning when their packages weren't so good, and they've upped the quality of that, and then they're starting to do more packages and take things over. It feels good that people are involved, and you're part of that, and maybe part of guiding people or helping people, or making sure that the end user, again, going all the way back down to it, the end user's got that good experience, because you kind of help that maintainer see that that's an important part of the process. So that's kind of what it is for me.
No, makes sense. I mean, so you touched on it, the monthly stats thing that you've got going. That actually helps me, because then I don't want to be last on that list. So that one for me does help, because there is an element of, well, I have to beat Josh as an example, right? Which I don't always do, very rarely do. But what I did wonder, and I spoke to about, I can't remember, two weeks ago, I mentioned about if we can get the stats from the beginning of time.
Oh, that's right.
Because I think that would be interesting to see, as in where people have been involved, from a moderator point of view, and then when they've obviously kind of stepped away, or they've moved on to other things. It would be curious to see what that chart looks like, to see where people start to do moderation, their peaks and troughs, etc. So I think we can get that information out. So it would be good to have that and put that somewhere, because then, like I say, that provides an incentive to continue to be involved. But that's just internet points at the end of the day. That's same as Stack Overflow contributions and points and all that sort of stuff. It helps.
Were you not third or fourth this year? I think you were third. I can't remember. I know I was fourth or fifth. I was after you, whatever the
I think
was.
The clear winner was The Cake Is a Lie, then it was Josh, and then I think it was me. Because especially just recently anyway, but all the work that we've been doing with the alpha, I've not had as much time as I normally do. For me, there was a time there where it was my morning, every morning was just a moderation queue. It was like a half an hour.
That's what we did when we started. Yeah, every day.
Every morning. So there's definitely been periods where I've been heavily involved in the moderation queue, but I've not been as involved lately. But once you started putting those leaderboards out, I'm like, oh, better pull my finger out and actually do something. So, and then what's Corey saying? Is that why get
That's exactly
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get 31 is a prolific package maintainer. Yeah.
There's a message in the chat just saying, is that why GEP 14 keeps pushing up new versions of an empty package that are almost immediately approved by GEP 13, and GEP 13 is Gary. So
that's exactly the right thing.
That'll be that to get that score increasing. We haven't done one for January though. I was thinking about that yesterday. We haven't done January's leaderboard yet. So I need to go and post that, pull those stats and post that. So we see how that goes. But again, you were talking about doing the moderation table, if you like, from way back when moderation started. Moderation started in 2014, so that's a long time's worth of stats. So
I mean, it does kind of takes us into the area of now that we can. I mean, for the folks that don't know, we made some kind of fundamental changes to our database infrastructure to a point where we can now get better information out in a timely manner from a statistics point of view. And we've kind of spoken around, we've got this already with a couple of kind of community contribution badges that you can get on CCR. So having now access to that information, I think would allow us to have more community contribution badges in terms of maintainers, moderators, how many packages they've got, etc. Maybe a badge for this, you've got 10 packages, you've got 100 packages, that sort of thing. I would personally like to see that just so that folk can showcase their contributions onto CCR easier.
CCR being Chocolatey Community Repository.
The acronym that we use in house. So what are your contributions to the Chocolatey Community Repository? And here's a badge that goes with it. It's just for those internet points and bragging rights and having that. But now that we have that information to hand, I think we can start making some of those more available, and we can maybe encourage Steph to create some more badges for us to that effect, and get her talents to use in that area.
I mean, I think I've got just under 200 packages, and that's not a lot by some other stuff. I'm not saying that for bragging rights. What I was meaning was you could have badges for 100, 200.
Yeah.
Some people have got 400 packages that they actively maintain. And you would think, well, how on earth do you manage, maintain 400 pack? Well, automation is how you would do that. And exactly. We've, the community repository, the Chocolatey packages Chocolatey packages repository. That's too much of a mouthful. We'll need to just call it Bob. That has automation built in, and a lot of other maintainers, myself included, have the same sort of automation where you can automate the updates of those packages. So you're not actually going in and manually changing things in those packages every time. A lot of it's done through automation.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's you as a person and as a kind of community contributor. So switching gears a little bit to go through the common questions that we have that have been inspired and in honor of Richard Campbell's way of doing things. So there's some short questions that are definitely standard questions that we do ask everyone who comes on. So what is your favorite coding language and why?
PowerShell, mainly. I am learning Go, and I probably am going to pick up Rust, because I quite like going. I used to be a C programmer of old, and Rust is quite close to that. But PowerShell, definitely. And why? What I really like about it is the objects. So when, if you go back to the Linux type system, everything's files, flat files. You're pulling that information in, and you've got to parse it. You've got to split it up, or you've got, regular expressions and all that stuff, split it with commas and whatever it is. PowerShell, things are delivered back with objects, and you can immediately start manipulating them. I just like the fact that I don't have to worry about converting stuff. PowerShell does it for me, and then I can work with it. It's so much easier.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm obviously a PowerShell expert, as you
You
know,
are.
Paul.
You are.
That's close to my heart. Yeah.
That's how we know you in the team, Gary. Is Gary
Is it?
the PowerShell expert?
Is
Yes.
it? It's
That's you. Yeah. That's it.
So with that in mind, so what is your IDE of choice when it comes to coding in your favorite language, and what is your go-to, and why do you love it or why do you hate it?
I used to use the ISE, so
Okay.
your PowerShell ISE, until VS Code was a bit more popular. I mean, I didn't love ISE. Actually, I didn't really like it at all, but it did its job, and it did a decent job, and that was that.
Yeah.
I have coded using Notepad++ as well for the syntax highlighting and all that stuff.
Yep.
I'm not one of these people that that uses. It's maybe the old-fashioned way of doing things. VS Code's got it all built in, and that's what I use now. So you can do all the debugging in there. I still actually I would call them print statements. This is the value of this variable. It's just a habit rather than going through debugging. So rather than using VS Code and using the terminal part at the bottom, I'll actually jump into a separate terminal that I've opened for. It's just the way I work. I'm not saying it's great, and people are probably horrified at what I'm telling them, but it works for me, and that's just the way I've always sort of coded and programmed. So yeah. I definitely didn't love the ISE. I like VS Code. I don't love it. I like it. I don't know enough about it. I don't use all the anywhere near the huge amount of features that it's got. I really don't. But I like it.
Good stuff. Okay, so then we come to the next question that was hinted at in the tweets that went out earlier. So there's a word that we use in the team that causes some disruptions in terms of how it's pronounced. So the word is spelt nupkg. Now I pronounce that in the common vernacular way, which is nupkg. But everyone else who's come on the stream so far has pronounced it as new package, which is wrong, obviously. So Paul, what is the correct way to pronounce nupkg?
There's two answers to this. The first one is whatever way Gary doesn't pronounce it. That would be it. But it would be new package is the actual way it's supposed. It's not nupkg, Gary. It's not. It's not. And as we can see here, this is Gary's wrong pronunciation of NUPKG, Board of Shame, for everybody who can see that. And we've got Manfred, Maurice, and David all pronouncing it new package, and soon my name will be added. Well, I'll add it just now, actually. I'd be well doing it now while I remember. Unfortunately, the pen is running out a little bit, so it's going a little bit grey. So I don't know if we can see that. So Paul's on this. That's 4. And can we see? Yeah, there's
nobody. Put my name in there. You need to put my name in there.
Oh, so I would, yeah.
There's at least one vote in there. Shocking. See, you're cheating already.
Yes, I know, because you'd have won if I'd have put that. I've made your name really big because there's nobody else going on that side of the list, so it doesn't really matter. So that's 4-1 there, Gary. I don't know if we should have ended this at the end of last year and tallied it up.
No,
you would have lost 3-1.
I'm inviting people on the show, Paul, next. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all good.
That's the invite question. Yeah, I'm not really caring about you, but how do you pronounce NUPKG?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Corey's coming on the stream next. He says nupkg. Right.
Does he? All right. We'll need to sort that out.
I've converted him.
I'd add that as part of his review that he has to. The next year he has to say new package.
Okay, so the next question in this area, what is your favorite chocolatey biscuit stroke cookie?
I was again thinking about this earlier on. Do you remember, Gary? I mean, we're not that far apart in age. We're not far enough apart that you don't remember Viscounts.
I do.
You still get them today.
Yes.
I remember Viscount biscuit. So for people who don't know, Viscount's biscuit, it's got mint cream on top, and then it's just covered in chocolate. So it's really simple biscuit. But they were always fantastic when I was young, and they were huge, a bit like wagon wheels. They were huge when I was young. Now a wagon wheel is tiny, and a Viscount you can eat in one bite. So I always remember they were the fancy biscuit when I was young, because they come in foil as well. It's not like it's not plastic or paper. It's actual foil on that
But
biscuit.
you're saying the mint-based one. I would have preferred the orange one because you got
See,
an orange Viscount as well.
Yeah, much later on.
Aye.
Jaffa cakes were another good one. If you eat them properly. No?
The kids eat the
like
Jaffa cakes. I don't eat the Jaffa cakes. I don't like.
But if I had to pick one or two Viscounts, I remember when I was young, they were like, oh, wow, fancy biscuits because they came in foil and a fancy packet. And
I'll give you that.
But as I said, when they were much bigger. Everything's smaller now. It's just...
Okay, so I think the breakaway I said. I think it was a breakaway I said. Because you accused me of being posh with my
who said biscuit. A gold bar? I asked somebody recently what their favourite chocolate biscuit was, and they said a gold bar.
Oh, I don't think that was me.
I really didn't like gold bars.
I don't mind.
They were kind of white. It was like it wasn't quite white. It was like fudge coloured chocolate. I didn't like them. Don't know who that was. I bet it was someone in the team. They're going to put a message in the chat.
Okay, so we've got a couple more questions coming up. So, what is your favorite? You hinted at this earlier. So, what is your favorite memory regarding Chocolatey? For example, meeting folks in person for the first time, attending a conference, etc. What's your favorite memory from a Chocolatey standpoint?
I've got two. If I can use two.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was that conference where we went to. I can't remember. Was it 2018, 2019? I can't really remember. It was round about then.
So,
I think it might have actually been the first time we met as well.
If it's the same one I'm thinking of, yes, where we drove from the airport to the conference.
From Chicago to Wisconsin. Yes. So we met in the airport, which sounds dodgy, but it wasn't. And then we went out of the front door of Chicago. Is it O'Hare?
O'Hare, is it? O'Hare, yeah.
Out the front door of that airport, and I walked into a wall of heat that I have never felt before in my entire life. And it was literally a wall. Yeah. As soon as the doors opened and I walked forward, it hit me in the face. And we walked all the way to the car rental place, got the car, and you were driving to Wisconsin. And we pulled over on the hard shoulder, or I don't know what they call them in the US. We call them a hard shoulder, but the emergency lane or whatever, because we had to get something out the trunk of the car. And again, I opened the door to get out the car and it just smacked me in the face again. It was like, I'm just surrounded by walls of heat. I just thankfully everything had air conditioning because I could not have tolerated that for any more than a few minutes. I'm from Scotland. We don't get heat like that.
That was your first trip to the States, wasn't it?
It was.
I remember that.
The only other time I've ever felt heat like that is when I've opened the oven door. And that's literally what it felt like, just standing in front of an oven constantly. So yeah, that was first trip to the States as well. That was good. That was a good event.
It was a very good conference. And I had a similar experience when I went to Singapore, and this exact same experience. Opened the doors open from the airport, and it was just boom. Like, yeah, it's quite hot.
But it was dry as well. That was the other thing. How things survive in that heat, I have no idea.
So that was your first. You said you had two. So what was your second one?
The second one was, I think it was WinOps 2019.
Yeah.
Where you were forced to roll up all the t-shirts. That wasn't the highlight, but that was funny.
It was.
And we met Kim, Maurice, and who else did we meet? There was three people.
Manfred was there.
Was it Manfred?
Manfred was there. Yeah. Pascal.
Okay. Pascal, that was the person.
And
I was thinking of that. I forgot Manfred was there at all. Sorry, Manfred.
Pascal's colleagues, Didier and I forget the name. And there was Manfred's friend as well. I feel bad.
Florian.
Florian, yes. That name would escape me. Yes, no, that was definitely a very good conference, that one.
It was. We did a workshop at that conference, didn't we? CCM. It was one of the very first CCM workshops.
Yeah, we did. But that was where we showcased CCM for the first time. Yeah. And we kind of showed off what it can do. Yeah.
I think I spoke at that conference as well.
It was quite nerve-wracking because something wasn't working or the setup hadn't worked, and was it not the case that we had all of the people in the workshop checking into CCM as well? I can't remember the details, but yeah, it all worked out. But
I remember. There was a couple of issues, but we managed to sort them. Yeah. So those were the two good memories.
Good stuff.
There's been many others, but those are the ones that jump
out. Yeah. Okay. And then, so what does the future look like for you then? What are you working on? It doesn't have to be related to Chocolatey. What is it? What's next on your to-do list?
I'm going to win the lottery, and I'm going to sail around the world
There you go.
on a massive yacht.
There you go.
That's going to be. No, what's the future hold for me? I think for me personally, or technically, I'm working a lot in Linux just now. I'm really enjoying that. I tried that about a year, I think it was about a year ago or something like that. Anyway. And it wasn't working for me. I'd went back to Windows, but I'm actually really enjoying working in Linux. I'm on my personal machine. I use Linux exclusively now. I haven't been back into Windows for a couple of months. So I'm actually enjoying kind of working in that different environment. So that's interesting for me. So that I've got some blog posts coming out about that. So I'm going to kind of write stuff about it, and how you can transition to Linux easily from a Windows. I've had no issues, but I'm sure everybody's setup's different. Work wise, we've got a lot of work on the go for Chocolatey products. We've talked about some of the alpha release where we're going to look at updating to Nougat v3 and .NET 4.8, .NET Network, .NET Framework 4.8. We're updating to for that, and then we've got plans after that for additional things as well. So we're really busy at Chocolatey in the next year as well. So yeah, there are lots of good things. Exciting time, lots and lots of work. And as I said, what's exciting for me is we're building that foundation. So as people we're releasing products, there might not be a huge number of changes there. People think, it's because we're building on that foundation, and we're really getting ourselves set up for the future. And I'm really excited that we're finally getting to do that. So yeah,
very good. So I had at least one other question.
Okay, I don't know about these. Just let everybody know. We are very off script because that's it. Okay, thanks, Gary.
So your GitHub username and your Twitter handle is hobby. Where does that come from? What's that about?
Oh, that's easy. When I was young, there was two Pauls in our group that used to hang around together.
Okay.
I can't remember the other guy's name. Paul, obviously Paul, but I think it was Paul L. His surname began with L.
Okay.
Or M, something like that. And mine was Paul B. So it's Hobby just naturally came out of that. So you say Paul B very quickly, you say Paul B.
Yeah.
And that's basically where it came from. Nothing more sinister than that. And even after that person kind of left our group, it just kind of continued, and that's the way it's been. Yeah, so I've just used it. So
I was just curious.
It's an easy one to kind of use in the internet because not many people have that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Your handle on websites and stuff like that. So whereas Paul B is taken.
I've only had one instance where, so I use Get13 pretty much everywhere, and that just came. I think it was when I was back creating a Hotmail account. I needed a thing for the start of the Hotmail account, and Get13 came to mind, so I used that. But there's been an instant recently where there's one other person is using Get13. I'm like, no, it can't start. It's every new service. You need to grab the username that is the same. But there was one that I couldn't. You might have fallen at this as well. There was something I signed up to. You needed to have a username that was longer than 5 characters.
Yes. Oh, I've got a solution to that.
Oh, what would you?
I add UK to the end of it.
Okay.
It's probably UK.
Okay.
I
can't remember what I did. It was back in the day. It was for MyGet. I signed up to MyGet, and they didn't allow usernames less than 5 characters. So I reached out to Martin and Xavier and said, can you do something about it? Because those are the people behind MyGet, and they allowed me to create a username on MyGet that had a 5-character username.
The actual definition of corruption, Gary? Is that not what that is? Using your power and influence to get things to be changed.
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why my Gmail username is different as well, because they wouldn't allow you to have a 5-character.
Did you not reach out to Larry and
I didn't. No, I probably should have. Probably said, like, do you not know who I am? And I could have got that changed. But no, I didn't.
They might have said, no, we don't. And that would have been devastating. So yeah.
But no, that was the only kind of follow-up question that I had that I thought would be interesting to know. So thank you for going through those. I think we're coming just up on time, so we've done quite well in terms of timekeeping, so that's good. So thank you for your time and answering all these questions. It's been good fun. So
thank you.
I don't.
I'll,
Have we confirmed who we're doing next, or is that
no,
still
no,
no?
we haven't got that confirmed. We're not that well organized for these.
No.
Unfortunately, we did. To be fair, we actually did have someone lined up, but unfortunately they can't do it. So we're having to kind of backtrack and find in. They'll be on a future stream instead. So we're having to find somebody else to stand in for that, and we haven't been able to. Or we haven't had the time actually to start looking for someone else at the moment. So that's what we're going to do. But well, I'll close out then, Gary.
Absolutely. I'll hand it back
thank you
over to
very much for.
You can take the host role back again.
I'll take it back again. Thank you. So thanks to Gary for being my co-host today and interrogating me. It's been good fun to talk about, who I am and kind of what I do. And thank you for watching us today. We really appreciate it. And please follow us on Twitch and subscribe with that bell on YouTube as well. And once you subscribe with the bell, you'll get notifications when we stream. Make sure you like or dislike the video on YouTube as well. We know then what kind of content that you want, and we can tailor it to that. Our next product spotlight stream is on the 2nd of March at 5 p.m. UTC, and we're going to look at recent Chocolatey releases. So as we've kind of talked about today, we've got, the alpha versions of Chocolatey CLI, and we've got future releases as well that will be coming out before that live stream. So that's in 2 weeks' time, today. And finally, our next community coffee break, as we talked about, Gary asked, do we have someone on? Unfortunately, that person can't be with us, so we're going to find a replacement, but that's the 16th of March at 5 p.m. UTC. So the same time this started, just a month from now. So please join us then. Gary, do you want to say anything before we finish up?
No, I don't think so. I think that's all I had to say. So thank you again for being allowed to answer questions. It's been fun. Interesting as always to find out what people have done, where they came from, and how they got involved in Chocolatey. So yeah, I wish I remember our first interaction, but I don't. No. Like I said, I remember our first meeting in person, but I don't recall when we first kind of met virtually, which is a shame.
You maybe blocked it again. Maybe it was so terrible.
It was such a terrible.
Apparently, I just shout at people all day, so
that
might have been
that may be.
I don't shout at anybody. Just to be very clear, I don't shout at anybody. Gary just likes to perpetuate this myth that I'm shouting at everyone. But maybe that's what it was, Gary. Maybe I was shouting and you just blocked it out. Maybe it was just terrible.
It's probably that rings true. Yeah, it does.
Okay. Well, we'll go and get some therapy from that first interaction. So thank you again to everybody watching, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Absolutely.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.